Hey, Tanisha. Great. Thank you. Have you been at the conference most of today? Good. I'm glad to hear. Cool. I had a workshop for my team at work at Microsoft, so I wasn't able to attend earlier. So I'm glad to get to be here for this piece. Good. I'm glad to hear. Hey, how's it going? You guys will have to take a run at the polls. For those who are applicable, it'll be fun to see. Heck, I want to fill them out for myself still. Right. Looks like we have some people filling in. And if you get a second, I know you're running between sessions, take a look at the polls. I think there's some fun questions in there. I'm going to be curious to see people's input.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm Desiree. I'm going to be your moderator to help you throughout the chat. So
Cool.
if you need anything, I'm here. I
I
will
love it.
mute myself for the time being, but yeah, I'm very excited to hear about your session today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, definitely excited to be here. Always fun to have these type of conversations, energizing for me just as much as the participants.
We love that, especially on International Women's Day, having some
It's exactly.
conference. It's great.
No, this was a perfectly planned conference.
Yep. I definitely owe it to Crystal, the president. She did a fantastic job. So,
That's cool. You'll remember this stuff, setting
oh
up
yeah,
these conferences, even post graduate. I have no question.
it's pretty great. Really quickly
Yeah,
before we start, is it okay if I share my screen? I'm just going
yeah,
to give our students who use our Edge program our little QR code really quickly,
perfect.
and then I'll let you have it again in just a minute.
Yeah, do I have to turn it off or you can just grab it?
um,
I'll turn it
let's
off and
see.
then you can, that way it'll make it even easier.
Okay, let's see if that works. Perfect.
Perfect.
So just for everyone who's joining us, this is our QR code for session 2. And then at the end, about 5 minutes before we end this, I'll put it back up just in case if anyone missed it at the beginning.
Hey,
Now,
Layla.
Layla's here. She'll help you with your moderation and stuff. And if you need me, I'm probably just going to sit and chat. All right. I'll let you get started.
Perfect. I'm filling out the polls, so I hope you guys will all fill out the polls because I think it'll be entertaining.
Of
Some
course.
questions apply to me still, some don't. So I was like, ooh, I may have wrote these questions, but I still have to think about it myself.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll do that one. Okay, cool. So first off, let me get my screen shared so you guys can kind of see some content. I have a simple presentation I built just because I'm a visual learner. Hopefully it's going to share in a second. There we go. Cool. Okay, so as I know Coco said, please bounce between the sessions. I think this presentation material is available for anybody who's interested. If you guys ask about it, I'm definitely willing to share my content. For me, this is more about the conversation and sharing a little bit about who I am and learning a little bit about each of you. So first off, happy International Women's Day. I'm very excited to be here presenting and kind of share a little bit, like I said, about me and really just introduce some thoughts for each of you to think about as you continue on your journey. Okay, so professional versus personal identities is why we're here. I'm going to go to the next slide. If my computer lets me, sometimes it's a little slow. Here we go. All right, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so as part of that, one piece I really want to highlight is in some cases, some people, there's a professional them and there's a personal them. For me, anybody who gets to know me quickly is like, oh my gosh, you're the same person at home, at work, at a grocery store. You name it. For me, it's just kind of easier to be myself. But one thing that became really apparent to me after graduating from Central was that it was key for me to really think about how I wanted to show up and how I wanted people to perceive me. In some cases, there's words that come to mind. I think all of you can reflect and think a little bit about yourself that your friends or family or classmates have said to you and said, this is kind of who you are. And you can choose to either honor those and really just say, that's how I want to be seen and show up. Or you may say to yourself, I want to change that perception. And so for me, right away, and some of you may see this, I don't know, because I'm getting older, so I don't know if this still applies, but I usually hear I'm high energy. And so you talk elementary school to sports, to high school, to college, to still to this day, people have always said to me that I'm high energy. And it's funny because when I first started my career, I was a teacher, and then I ended up actually going to the Boeing company with another job actually in between there. I'll share a little bit more at the end of this. But it was an entertaining story. I had this guy I was emailing who I didn't know how old he was. I didn't know his background. I didn't know anything about him, but I needed information from him. And one day I get to go meet him in person, and he says to me, just based on your email, I said to myself, I need to meet this girl. And he told me that my energy just shined throughout the email before he even knew me. And then when he met me in person, he was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly who you are. And so that was a really great moment for me in my career to kind of connect. Okay, this is how somebody perceived me. I now get to reflect and say, is that how I want to be perceived? Am I good with that? And then make a decision going forward. And in my case, again, I kind of said this, I like to be who I am and try to stay the same and not have different lives or different perceptions. So for me, it resonated. I was like, that's part of who I am. It's how I'm going to show up. And so I chose to kind of keep that as a visual or as something that people got to see about me. Another thing that got really interesting is, and I keep hearing, I just started at Microsoft about a year ago. I was at Boeing for 15 years, and I always got told I had this can-do attitude. And it was something that I really liked. And for those of you, that's part of what I love about Central students. When I had interns or when I would hire people, I loved the people that I met from Central Washington University because they had this push up my sleeves, dig in, figure it out, always up for like that challenge, like it says here. And that's something I would say is part of me and my brand being Brandy. But I'd also say it's a big thank you to Central Washington University because I think I don't know if it's the weather, I don't know what it is, but I would say the people that I see come from Central always have that reputation and how they show up. And it's an asset. And so that's, again, another example of where I said to myself, hey, I want to be known as this can-do person, and I want to show up this way. And one of the reasons you hear me say I would reflect and say, do I want to show up this way, is because perceptions are a reality. And it is really hard to change perceptions. And it can be challenging. It's something for you to reflect on and say to yourself, how do I want to be perceived? And choose to reflect. It can be hard to hear candid feedback, but I will tell you, it is the best gift you will get in your entire working career. You get to choose how much you respect and appreciate that person, because it may be somebody that you don't want to be like as a leader or as an employee. But feedback is a gift because somebody's telling you something and they're putting themselves out there to tell you something that you may or may not know. And you get to choose and say, do I want to change that, or do I want that to be the reality? Or maybe, this person isn't somebody I really want to be like, so I'm not going to worry too much about that feedback. But all of it is choices, and it's really important to remember. So you kind of see some of my next bullets, friendly and direct. I have a sign. I think you can kind of see it. It's right here, and it's actually, and then there's another piece right here. My employees, when I left Boeing, made some signs for me. And a lot of them would say to me, you never have to guess where you stand with me. And that was something that is important to me and how people are towards me. And then I always try to reflect on what people can handle. But the reality is I don't like to ever have to guess what somebody's thinking or how they feel about how I'm performing. And if there's something I'm doing that they don't like, I'm hoping they tell me so that I can fix it. And so I had a friend once tell me, she's like, Brandy, you could tell somebody that what they have done is just the worst thing ever. But the way that you say it is in such a friendly, caring manner that people know that it's really coming out of a place of care. And so they really can handle that feedback. And so it's something, again, I chose and said, yep, I'm cool with showing up that way. For some people, it can be too direct. And I always collect that feedback and then try to adapt to people, just because as a manager, that's part of the expectation is you really need to be aware of the people you're managing and what is best for them. because as a manager, your job is to put those employees before yourself. And that's why being a manager can be such a rewarding and challenging job, to be honest. Next is the lifelong learner. As a former teacher, it's something that was just part of who I am. For those who know about Central Washington Student Government Program, I was the Vice President for Equity, Diversity, and Community Service back in the day. And that was something I learned in that role, was getting to be a lifelong learner. So when I talk about these events you guys are participating in, they will shape you all throughout your career. I'm 40 years old now, and I still reflect back on some of the days at Central and the things that I did in my class curriculum and also in student government that helped set me up for the career that I have today. And then the other piece is the Lego. I'm a senior program manager at Microsoft. You'll hear me delve into a little bit more about the who I am, and I kind of am hoping you're going to get to see that. And then at the end, you'll kind of see how I became who I was, or who I am. I got nicknamed the Lego, and somebody told me, I didn't know that that's what they had called me. And they said, you're just the person who always brings people together to get things done. And so that was something I became known for. And again, I chose and said, hey, I love that. I love that I'm the one who helps bring people together. And that's part of something that's been a hallmark for my career and the direction that I've continued to go. Okay, so this is the professional me. Now you're going to get to learn a little bit about the personal me. There we go. So this is for me, the personal me, but if it was your presentation, this would get to be about the personal you. And again, it's all about choices, right? So everyone's path is different. There's doors that you'll open and there's doors that you'll close for yourself. And this is something I hope that you can really take away from this presentation for years and years to come. I've actually used this presentation with some of my colleagues at Microsoft who are talking about the balance of their family and personal life and their career aspirations. And it's something I would say that I still struggle with personally. I was a senior manager at the Boeing company who was on my way to being an executive. And I started to really reflect on, I had a young son and I really wanted him to get to know me. And so for me, I had to really reflect on what I wanted my life to look like and the decisions I wanted to make. So I closed a door and left a company I had been with 15 years and had a really amazing network and reputation. And I opened a new door in a whole new industry and had a lot of other personal life changes and thought, this is the time for me to do it. I'm young enough and adaptable enough to where I feel comfortable. But for all of us, there's doors that you open and close. And I think sometimes people, they don't, I'm not going to say pay attention, but they don't intentionally close and open those doors. And that's something that's really important for you to reflect on, is that this is your life. You get to make it whatever you want it to be. That's the greatest part, I think, about having this career and personal journey is it's all about being intentional and thinking about what life you want and making choices accordingly. So as it says, your journey will continually change, and that's okay. When I go to a slide in a little bit, you're going to see if anybody asked me if this would be my life at 40, I would have had no clue. I have another friend I was teasing who planned out her entire life during college, and she performed to that life. However, later on, she realized that wasn't the exact life that she had wanted. And so now she's redirecting and changing her path. And so the reality is you can always change your journey. And it's all about choices and decisions and being intentional with yourself and knowing how you want your life to be. So for me, a little bit, I'm a mother. I have a son named Bram. He just turned 6 years old. And I am a new stepmother. So I have 4 stepchildren. One is who's 18, who's actually attending Central as a freshman, a 16, 11, and a 7-year-old. I'm a wife. This is my second marriage, which again, if you would ask me would I ever thought that would happen? No, but I'm happy it did. I'm happier than I've ever been. I have a grandmother who is in this middle picture with my son, who's 85 years old, and she actually lives with me. And so I'm also a caregiver to her. Today, someone was trying to scam her and she walked in while I was running a meeting, actually, and I had to deal with that. So that's that balancing working from home. I am a friend. I have friends from high school, from college, friends that I've made at work. I'm about to throw a surprise birthday party for one of my employees. that's at Boeing that I no longer work at. So for me, I continue those friendships wherever I go, as long as I'm getting and giving that equal amount for them. Those are the type of friendships that have lasted over a lifetime. I mentioned a little bit, I'm a teacher. And so my husband actually teaches at some community colleges on the side of his regular full-time job. And he keeps getting me to think about community college and teaching in some of the community colleges. So that's something I have contemplated. And I'm also a mentor. Like I said, I still have my employees who call me, or they're not even my employees anymore, but they're my friends, but I still mentor and coach them. And I love that they think so highly of me to give me those calls and want to talk about things. But yeah, so there's a picture of kind of my new family, and just an amazing example of you never know who the personal you is going to be, and to really make those intentional decisions of opening and closing doors so that you can live your best life. Okay, next slide. And then we're going to do some polls and questions, but this hopefully will give you a good background. Okay, managing the duality. You kind of heard me talk a little bit about this. So hopefully it's a little bit of a wrap up. For me, I show up as one person. That's my choice. Some people, they really prefer to keep the lives completely separate, which I can totally understand. So I think it's that personal choice for people to reflect on and what feels best to them. A lot of my friends, you kind of heard me, my wedding was like almost all Boeing. My baby shower, all Boeing. Now a lot of my friends have left Boeing and we still all hang out. So in my case, I just kind of am who I am, and I've collected a lot of friends throughout my timeline of work and personal, but they kind of blend together because of that choice. Creating boundaries. So this is kind of an interesting one. I would say you guys, some of the presentations are on this exact example. At 40 years old, I am still continuing to really reflect on boundaries and how to start and stop work, and make sure that my family is a priority and that they're getting to see me the needed amount of time and feeling that love versus at times. My son and I were in Colorado last summer and we were at a trampoline park and he was playing and pretending that he had to go to the office and that he couldn't talk to me because he was in a meeting, and he was typing on his fake keyboard on his lap. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is how I'm showing up to him. So it was a real reflection for me about how he'll come in now and he comes and gives me a kiss on the cheek in the mornings while he's getting ready. And I'm running a meeting and my team knows, and the people I work with, that that's a priority for me. And thankfully they understand that that's a very cute and sweet thing to get to experience, both as somebody attending the meeting and somebody receiving the kiss in the morning. And then finding trusted allies. You heard a bit about this, about how some of these people have become major friends of mine that I've worked with. Something I'm working on right now is in the UK. And so there's somebody who's actually more like my dad's age, who's become a true buddy at work. And he keeps saying to me, like, I can't wait for you to come visit in the UK. And it's funny to think about, but you find some people that you just connect with and you know you can build a trust circle and bounce things off of. I would say it has been the most important part of my career, is being able to find people I can trust and lean on and having a safe place. And I highly recommend when you get into that world, both as interns to start with and then formal positions, find that circle of people that you feel comfortable with at work, and sustain those relationships. They're really important. At home, having routine to keep it all organized, and really being able to have something to lean on. For me, taking a shower every morning before my coffee is a top priority. I can't start my day. I've realized, like, I follow these steps, and if I follow those steps, it starts my day great. If I decide to do different things, it can throw my day off just because there's so many things going on. And then another piece is priorities. And you guys heard me talk about this with the professional piece and personal, but really thinking about your priorities and staying true to them, and reflecting on how you want that life to be, and checking in. I think that becomes more and more important every single year, just because the more experience you get in your career, the more you're going to get pulled on for lots of great opportunities. And you're going to have to reflect and say, does this get me to where I want to go? And if it doesn't, you've got to make some intentional decisions, or your career will drive you. And then fun. I like to have fun both at work and home. It's really important for me to be enjoying life. I think there's some perceptions of you can survive life, and then there's that you can just really enjoy life and flourish. And flourishing for me is really the key. And that's a choice I make. If I'm not feeling like I'm flourishing, then I need to reflect a little bit on what's going on. This quote is actually, just so you guys know, my husband built this slide deck for me, which was super cool because he knew I was super excited to be here. And he had started it, and he just loves PowerPoint. It's hilarious. And so I've obviously updated and put my piece in there. But what was fun to see is this quote at the bottom: if the company is going to struggle without you for one day, then there are bigger problems. It's actually a quote my dad told me when I was 22 years old, maybe 23. I was brand new at Boeing. And I would get nicknamed as the girl who would sleep under her desk. I did not sleep under my desk, might I add, but I didn't have a lot else going on. I loved my job. I loved what I was doing. I wanted to be the best I could be. And I was just known as someone who was always there working her rear off. And one day I wasn't feeling well. And my dad, I was like, I can't miss it. There's this really important meeting. I can't not be there. And my dad told me this quote, and I've told it to my husband. So it's funny to see now that he reflected on this quote and shared it. But it was very true for me and still is, that sometimes I can get caught up and think that um, I have to be somewhere and it's the only option. And at that point, sometimes you're doing more detriment to yourself and your family. And so you have to really reflect on, again, those priorities. Okay. So this is the slide I was talking about. It's a lot to take in. I do not expect you to see all this. It's my career timeline. So it tells you a little bit about me on a page. I'm a Washington State local. I was originally a teacher. I went to Central Washington University, as I mentioned, for education, graduating in 2004. And I student taught in Germany, which was super cool. Just the fact I did student government. My dad learned something about me early on, which was he just had to tell me I couldn't do something. And then that would help me figure out that I had to prove him wrong. And so I found a way through our Department of Education to go talk about student teaching overseas. And at that point, there wasn't a program at Central Washington University, and different people gave me different names, and I just tracked them down and created a program and was one of the first to student teach overseas at Central. And it's a great example of just having that tenacity and asking questions and going after what you want, because it was one of the best experiences of my life, getting to spend 4 months in Europe and, travel around. And it really shaped me. But I will say this about my sophomore year, almost into my junior, I realized I probably didn't want to be a teacher, to be honest. And my dad still would chuckle. I was like, I want to shape the world. I want to make it a better place, which I still definitely believe in. But I also started to realize that money was a little more important to me, and things that I thought money wasn't going to matter, it did. And so we started to have these conversations, and my dad's like, a degree's a degree. So I finished that degree and then started working at Philips Sonicare and did sales and training with them. And I will be transparent with all of you, because it looks like, oh, you jumped straight into a career. Actually, no. I was student or substitute teaching after I graduated and came back from Germany, and waitressing. And so there, just so you know, hopefully you get a great career right outside of college, but also know you may not, and figure out what job you're going to do to make the money. But I know there's a lot of the business programs are in high demand right now. And it's all about that, what's going on in the world. And that's what creates some of those hiring opportunities. So in my case, I was doing other jobs for a few months, and then I got picked up by Sonicare. It was a great experience for me. I did, like I said, sales and training. But what I really got from that was I got to work on an SAP project. So that is some of you actually probably have gotten to take some classes and know about SAP. But in our situation, it was a CRM, customer relationship management system. And it was the first time I got to see project management, which I did not know was going to be my future career. But at that point, I thought it was the coolest job. So from Sonicare, I had a great experience with them, but my best friend was working at Boeing, and she told me about her getting to go to like women in aviation conferences and getting training on hours. And I was so jealous. I was like, I want to work there. So I ended up getting a job within Boeing Phantom Works. And at that time, I had actually done my MBA at night, when I was at Sonicare and a little early into my Boeing career. So I had developed this network of people. So what each of these jobs pointed out is each job I learned something new, right? For Boeing Phantom Works, it was there's a process that wouldn't work, and my job would be go figure out how to fix it. And I got that experience from Central trying to go create the student teaching overseas program. And then I went to something called CAS Maintenance Engineering. And in that job, I managed a project that was a high visibility, high dollar project that nobody could get figured out. And I just got to know people, learned this is where I got nicknamed the Lego, learned to understand what helped them be who they were and what help they needed, and just partnered people up. And it became a director's favorite project. And so by that, it gave me high visibility and it kind of grew my network. And then I got an opportunity working at 737, continued project management. And what's funny about all this is here I am just a few years into my career, six years, and I'm a level 4. A level 4 in Boeing, a level 5 is the highest you can go as an independent contributor. So by just having tenacity, working hard, partnering with people, I had a ton of career advancement. I was doing really well. And I say that because I really would want you guys to walk away knowing you can make anything possible as long as you work hard at it. Because if somebody would have asked me again, I would have never known I could have gotten there. Anyways, I continued as a level 4 for a few more jobs. And then I had somebody tap me on the shoulder and say, you should think about management. And I used to always think I wanted to be a manager until I saw what managers did. And then I thought, oh no, I don't really want that job. Having to put everyone else before myself. I was young and having tons of fun with my friends, and the idea of having to be there at whatever hour and always available scared me, to be honest. But I would tell you that first management job was one that really helped shape me, and I learned a ton. And during that time, I actually had gotten engaged and then married. So that's what my 2 dogs resemble here, is that was the beginning of starting a family and starting to have this kind of stationary life. At that time, this ESRC business operations job, I got tapped on the shoulder to consider this job and was like, oh no, I don't think I want to do that job. I don't want to move to Everett. And funny enough, a mentor called me and said, hey, you're limiting yourself. You need to think about that. And it was a pivotal moment in my career because it opened up a ton of other doors. And so by taking that assignment, I was actually in Everett for 7, 8 years, which I would have never thought possible. I actually told my boss I would never move to Everett back in I think it was 2011 right here. I was like, oh, I never want to move to Everett. I love living on the South End. So I'm a fan of having an opinion, but always it's okay to learn and grow and be wrong. And that's how we develop and get better. So from here, I did this biz ops manager job. And the reason I want to point this out, what you're going to start to see is in my personal life, I had a kid right here, right? So I got tapped on for this senior manager job. And I said, I can't do it. I'm pregnant. It doesn't make sense for me to go take on a higher risk job that has more pressure. I won't be able to do as well. And a friend of mine who had a kid a couple of years earlier called me and said, you're limiting yourself and you need to reconsider your thought. And it was great advice. It's actually somebody who now works at Microsoft and we're buddies. It's a great example of forming those trusted allies I talked about and people who can help you reflect and kind of think through kind of your perceptions, right? And really question those. So needless to say, I had my kiddo who means the world to me. And we actually ended up moving to Mill Creek, which I never, like I said, would have thought possible, but it was all part of this ESRC job move. And then I was actually promoted to a senior manager in that job, which was a great experience. And during that time, I ended up getting divorced, which I wouldn't have thought, but was probably a great thing for me in my life, because I ended up meeting my now husband and his 4 kids and getting a job at Microsoft and moving to Issaquah to this house all in about a 3-month period, which all of my peers tease me for. They're like, what person would do that? I chose to, crazy enough. So I say this because I want you to really think through what I shared with you. There's a lot of doors that I opened and closed myself very intentionally. And that drove my career to where I'm at now, which is a senior program manager at Microsoft. And I don't think if you would have asked me in any way, would I think I could get into tech? I did not think I could. And I am beyond thankful for the job I have right now because it gives me so much more flexibility than I've ever had before. Okay, so that is a bit about me and a lot about hopefully developing boundaries and really thinking through how I'm that professional and personal you. So now I want to open up some questions. And you can ask me anything. I'm an open book.
No questions yet in the chat.
That's okay. And I see the polls. I'm hoping some people want to fill out. I see a little bit in here, but it's 2 votes, and one of them is mine. So that's not as insightful. But I do.
We do have a few people, like at least 8 people who voted in the
Oh,
poll.
sorry. I see it. I saw the 2 for yes. I just resonated on mine. No, that's good. So let's talk a little bit. Oh, wow. No, there's a bit more. Sorry, I just had to refresh a little bit. Okay, this is cool. Nothing for question 1. Okay, but let's go in here. So interesting. Are the personal and professional you the same person? 2 yes and 8 no. Does anybody want to share a little bit about why they chose what they did and kind of what their journey's been?
No responses yet, but I'll share. I actually have more than 2 like me's. I have like the me that's like with family. I have the me that's with friends, the work me, the school me. I just find it easier to like separate everything because being the same person gets confusing a lot for me.
I could see that. So it just makes it easier to kind of compartmentalize.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a great tool for your career. Some people are really, really good at it. And I think it can be extremely valuable in your ability to handle stress because then you're able to kind of segment life and leave pieces behind. I could learn more from that. That's not a strength of mine, to be honest. Thanks for sharing, Layla.
Yeah. We still don't have any responses in the chat. I'm pretty sure they're just taking a while to type.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to talk about, and I love this. I'm so intrigued. So what are you looking most forward to in your future? Adventuring and experiencing the world, 100%. Now, I'm going to make a statement, and then I'm hoping somebody can tell me if this is why or if there's different. I'm wondering if COVID and being on lockdown has affected this, or if it's just where you're at because you're finishing up college. Like I'm a little curious why people picked adventuring, experiencing the world. I also picked that, to be honest. And I'm missing this. I can't wait to get to do it again. But I'm curious why else people picked it.
I guess I'll respond to this question too. For me, before going back to school, I took a 3-year break from like community college and university, and it was just like doing the same thing over. So I'm just ready to like finish everything, get a job like far away, and do something new, see the world.
I love that. No, good for you. Where do you think you'd want to go?
Anywhere that's not Washington.
Anywhere that's not Washington.
Yeah.
No, I get that. I told you I had student taught overseas in Germany, and that was the coolest experience. I can't say it enough. I'm so happy I made that decision. And Layla, if you ever want to bounce things off, let me know.
Yeah, more definitely.
Now, I don't know if this is okay, but having been a past teacher, I might call on people, and I hope it doesn't make you uncomfortable. You can always pass in the chat. But I was going to see Caitlin, do you want to share anything? Have any questions or thoughts?
I have a different response, not from Caitlin.
Oh, please.
It says, my family has always pushed how important it is to travel and live before settling down.
Oh, I love that. I will tell you guys, my husband, it was Air Force, right? And he thought he was going to get some amazing like international assignment. He ended up in North Dakota. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. And so I say that only because the poor guy had kids young. And so he hasn't gotten to see a lot. And so We're looking forward to taking some of the kids. Right now, having 4 kids and 2 adults to take on an international trip would cost me my life savings. So I'm waiting on that just a little bit, but I don't want to wait too long. So I appreciate whoever shared that. Lauren, did you want to add anything? Darius, you're up next. So just a heads up. They're dropping. Coco, you told me to call on them, but they're dropping. Lauren or Darius? Next time we lock them in. I like that. And it's really, guys, I love feedback. Did you like what I shared? Do you want me to elaborate more on anything? Quiet. Okay.
Hello.
Hey, Coco.
Hey, I was just hiding. So the moment we say we're going to call people's names, they just try to escape. Whoever ran away from us, we know your name, and you will be registered for my class next quarter. That will be a whole lot worse than this.
And I get it. It is scary to ask questions in a larger group, so I totally understand. But please.
No, actually, this session happens between class hours. So I think scheduling wise, we run into a little bit of conflict with some class times. But I do have a question.
Please.
From some of our students, and that's one of the reasons a lot of our students ask their professor to ask Layla to record this, because they have to go to class.
Oh, got it.
But yes, I do have a student question, which is related to the recent buzzword of authenticity, of being yourself at work, right? Because for those of us who compartmentalize and find that helpful, could you shed some lights on, if your professional self and your personal self are not exactly the same side of you, how do you be authentic, or how do you own the different version of yourself? Can you speak to that, and whether you have some experience in that regard as well?
Yeah, I think what's really important that you kind of brought up is, first off, authenticity is definitely a buzzword. And I'd say some people, I'll personally tell you, I've left jobs and managers if they couldn't demonstrate it. So for me, authenticity is very important. But back to your point, does authenticity mean having to let everybody in to see everything? Not at all. It's an opportunity for you to share pieces of you that you feel comfortable and safe sharing. And I would recommend for people to share pieces of them, because I think there's a balance, and you want to feel comfortable in your own skin. But if you don't share pieces of yourself, how do people connect to you? How do they get to form a relationship with you? And as I mentioned, one of the most important pieces in your career is finding trusted allies. Doing good work is, of course, bar none, number one. But if people can't see who you are and connect to you and form a relationship, you're not going to be able to build those allies. And if you do, it's just going to take a ton of time. And I'll tell you, in being in tech, people change jobs like I've never seen in my whole life. At the Boeing company, I formed relationships because everybody stayed in the same job for years, the same company forever. But in tech, it moves real quick. And the team I'm in right now, what's super cool is everybody's like, this is the best team I've ever gotten to work for in tech, which I'm thankful for. We go out and have happy hours and connect and help support each other in ways that you just don't get to see. And the reason we've done that is because we've trusted each other and opened up and shared pieces and been authentic. And if you don't do that, it is hard for people to connect and form a relationship with you. Did that answer the question, Coco?
Yes, I think it's with buzzwords comes buzz articles that's going to pop up left and right, and depending on which social media you're on. And what I wish our students would understand is that social science explains less than 30% of the variance. What that means is that 70% of the time, even serious research can be wrong about social science. So it's okay to own different sides of yourself. It's okay to present a different side of yourself in different settings. As a matter of fact, it's a professional skill. It's also okay if you're comfortable as there's only one side of me. Like, this is me, and I'm the same way at home as I am at work. It's quite all right. It's more about what Brandy just said about what you choose to share.
Yeah.
And how you do it, that actually conveys who you are to the different audience that you interact with. So now that a few students have actually left, they'll never get to see this side of me. The side that actually can lie and go, if you just left, you won't graduate. And now I'm getting recorded. That's great. This is great.
Not a real threat, a joke, and use of sarcasm, which is authenticity.
Yes.
See, I'm
check.
And there's my businessese flip. But you hit on something, Coco, that I probably didn't say the word, and I feel like I should have said it 75 times in here. Audience. Know your audience. And if you don't know your audience, be careful, right? But it doesn't mean be careful, be scared, be nervous, be uncomfortable, but know that you need to understand that person, where they're coming from, and try to, that is like a business jiu-jitsu is what I would call it. Figuring out how to read a room, read people, pay attention to their cues, and understand is paramount in your ability to interview and get jobs. If you are not good at paying attention to other people and their wants and needs and desires and connecting with them, you're going to have a tough career, to be frank.
And another question from some of our students is, do you experience a obvious change in your professional identity or your personal identity, especially on the professional front? Because a lot of us, especially when we were younger, we actually experienced those changes, but we did not see them coming. I did not see the difference of being a grad student in a doctoral program versus becoming a junior faculty member. I have no idea. I was like, okay, I'm a researcher. But it's actually not the same deal at all. But I kept telling myself that I'm a researcher. I'm a professor. I want to be a professor. But have you experienced that change? Did you see it coming? Did you recognize it? And when you do recognize that, hey, you are changing who you are, how you present yourself to the world, what was it like, and what helped, and what are the not to do's? When you realize that you have to change some pieces of yourself now that you're doing something different in your job or in your life. Were there some lessons learned about to do's or not to do's?
Yeah, I just had this great conversation with a peer of mine today, and in this case, he's male, right? And we were chatting about the different stereotypes of males versus females, and then the life balance of taking care of children and your career and what falls on a mom versus a dad. And he was introducing himself to somebody for a future job opportunity, to be honest. It's actually somebody who got the job he interviewed for and didn't get it. And now he's going to say, hey, I want a job to work for you, right? Which, good on him. And he said to the person, the first thing he introduced was, I'm a new parent. And it was the first time he's ever used that phrase. And it caught him off guard because he had changed who he was and his priorities. And he just had that conversation yesterday and shared it with me today. So, Coco, the reason I bring that up is for all of you, it's one thing to come out of college and be super excited about your career and be one person. I was definitely the go-getter, gonna work however many hours person. And then I met this new friend group at my second Boeing job, and all of a sudden had this great social life and these great friends, and we were going out, we were having this great time playing Boeing softball. I mean, you name it, we had fun. And all of a sudden work it was still busy, number one, but it wasn't my top priority. And so back to your point, how changing who I was, I had to really reflect and say, how do I want to show up at work? And for me, I wanted to let some of the senior leaders I was working with know that I have a personality and that work is not my entire life. And I intentionally let them in on pieces. So something I will share that will make you guys laugh. I have a friend she was like top 5 under 40 at the Boeing company. And now she's working at some big company and she's in news articles in like the Harvard Journal. And I remember when she was my peer, and we laughed because some of these senior leaders were like, hey, what'd you guys do last night or last week? And I'm like, oh, we went drinking. We had the greatest time at this bar and we had so much fun. And my friend messages me, I can't believe you just said that out loud. Shut your mouth. And was like, Brandy. And she was so embarrassed that I had said it. And I'm like, oh, but she had a very intentional persona. And she is one of those people we just talked about where she keeps work, Sarah, and then there's Brandy, right? And there's these different, and it was fascinating because back to your point, yes, there's some good and bad about sharing who you are and letting people have those pieces and changing who you are intentionally. And I think something you have to reflect on is that slide where I talked about how do you want to show up and who do you want to be? And it might mean keeping 3 separate personas, and you have to intentionally say, how you want to show up and just stay in connection with that and keep those feedback lines to make sure, because I would love to say that we all know how we show up, but you're kidding yourself. It's really important you have people who give you that feedback, because I think a dangerous place is to just think I am who I am. This is how I'm going to show up and not get that feedback and collect that input. Does that help? Hopefully. And for those on the recording, I see some people are finding me on LinkedIn. Anybody is always welcome to reach out to me any day, schedule a call, talk through things. Some of the coolest people I got to meet are some of the business program has, I forget what they call these events, but I would go to some of these happy hour events that were through, do you know about any of those, Coco? I'm trying to think of who arranged them. But anyways, I went to a happy hour, met somebody who ended up getting a job at Boeing. He called me for interview advice. There was another guy who was an intern and he stayed in touch with me. And so I'm a relationship person. And so please feel free to reach out and talk to me, and we can always have conversations one-off, because I do know it can be hard to ask questions in larger groups or when you're not here because you're in class.
We can have happy hours with Brandy all the time.
Hey,
however many hours you want to give us, we will use it.
No, we did a pizza thing that Boeing bought pizza, and we came in and did some like breakout sessions, and any way I can help, I want to try to help.
So some of the students left because they have a class that is actually starting in the next 10-15 minutes. So do we have more questions for Brandy?
Or feedback, Coco. If you get any feedback,
Will do.
I love feedback. Please let me know.
Will do.
I wish we were in person. It's a little easier to read the room and like have more back and forth, but do the best I can.
Yeah, Hoppen's constraint is that it does increase the security. That is, we know who's in the session. There won't be any uninvited guests, as we sometimes did have on Zoom. Zoom, on the other hand, is more interactive. Teams is actually great, only that it does require everybody to have a Microsoft account, which actually should work for Central students, but I guess there is a timing effect between Zoom and Teams. So Zoom landed for our students before Teams did.
Well, and I was going to say, you guys as students can get the student discount on Microsoft software, which I highly recommend, and don't even remember what it is, but I did it when I was a student.
And now I think Microsoft has, and Central has an agreement. I think, Layla, correct me if I'm wrong, but students get to download it for free, no?
Yeah, all university students get the whole Microsoft Office thing for free.
Sweet. That's great. My brother's jealous right now.
You can sign up for 5 credits, then free Microsoft products. Well, thank you very much, Brandy, for spending time with us today. And we will set up something for happy hours with Brandy in the future, coming back in spring.
Deal.
And hopefully we can do this in person next time.
Sounds great. I really appreciated it, and reach out if you need anything, okay?
Yep. Thank you, everyone. And if you are still in this session, let's move back to main stage for our closing 30 minutes with 5 alums.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.